338,000 men stood trapped on a burning beach, surrounded, with nowhere left to run. Behind them, tanks rolling closer. Above them, bombers screaming down. Before them, only cold water and silence. Their own commanders privately expected catastrophe. Churchill feared losing Britain's entire trained army within a single week. What happened next would become the greatest rescue in military history, born from the edge of total defeat. Among the rescuers would be a man who had already survived one of history's most infamous disasters. Keep watching, because his small wooden boat would carry more soldiers than anyone thought humanly possible. May 1940, Germany's tanks tore through France faster than London or Paris believed was even possible. The plan seemed unstoppable. German panzer divisions smashed through the Ardennes forest, a route French generals called impassable. Within days, the British Expeditionary Force was severed from French allies, pushed relentlessly toward an unforgiving coastline. Belgian, French, and British soldiers retreated together, exhausted and confused, chased by an enemy moving faster than retreat. By May 19th, General Lord Gort quietly warned London that full evacuation might soon become their only choice. Nobody said the word defeat aloud, yet every soldier understood exactly what was closing in around them. The Germans seized Boulogne, then Calais collapsed. One by one, every escape route toward the coast vanished. Only one port remained standing between 400,000 soldiers and complete, irreversible annihilation: Dunkirk. Its beaches were dangerously shallow, its harbor shattered, offering almost no shelter from relentless German bombing runs. Churchill's commanders expected to rescue perhaps 30,000 men, a fraction of those actually trapped on the sand. Then, on May 24th, something extraordinary happened that historians still argue over more than 80 years later. Hitler ordered his panzer divisions to halt, just 15 miles from Dunkirk's desperate, exposed, defenseless soldiers. No one fully knows why. Fatigue, caution, or Hitler's belief that Britain would simply negotiate peace instead. That pause, lasting barely 3 days, became the razor-thin margin that would decide thousands of lives. Admiral Bertram Ramsay, working from tunnels carved beneath Dover Castle, began planning something never attempted before. He called it Operation Dynamo, named after a generator room hidden deep within those ancient stone tunnels. The original goal was modest: save perhaps 45,000 men over just 2 desperate, uncertain days. On May 26th, the evacuation formally began, though almost nobody believed it could possibly succeed. The first day brought heartbreak. Only a handful of men reached safety amid smoke, chaos, and confusion. German Stuka dive bombers screamed down from the sky, turning the crowded beaches into fields of fire. Soldiers waited for hours in freezing water, watching ships burn while queuing patiently, silently, for rescue. Then Britain made a decision that would become legend. It called upon its own ordinary citizens. Fishing boats, pleasure yachts, and lifeboats were requisitioned from ports, scattered across the entire southern coastline. Nearly 700 small civilian vessels answered the call, crewed by volunteers who had never seen combat. These little ships could reach shallow waters, where destroyers and cruisers simply could never follow safely. One of them was a 58-foot yacht named Sundowner, owned by a 66-year-old retired sailor. His name was Charles Lightoller, once the senior surviving officer of a ship called the Titanic. 28 years after surviving that disaster, Lightoller sailed straight back into another one, willingly, without hesitation. He took only his eldest son and one 18-year-old scout as his entire volunteer crew. At Dunkirk, Lightoller squeezed 75 men into Sundowner's tiny cabin, 55 more crammed across her open deck, 130 soldiers aboard a private yacht built for a family, dodging bombs across open water. Another unlikely hero was Massey Shaw, a London fireboat never designed to leave the River Thames. She had no compass built for open sea, so her crew bought one hastily from a local shop. Massey Shaw crossed the channel 3 separate times, rescuing more than 500 trapped, exhausted soldiers. Even the smallest boat mattered. Thamesy, barely 15 feet long, still crossed those same deadly waters. Fishermen, retirees, and Sunday sailors suddenly found themselves ferrying terrified strangers under relentless German gunfire. By May 28th, Belgium officially surrendered, exposing the trapped Allied flank even further to disaster. Yet that same day, thick clouds and smoke over the coastline actually slowed the German air assault. Nearly 18,000 men were rescued that single day, a number nobody had truly dared hope for. May 29th brought a maximum Luftwaffe effort. German bombers determined to end the evacuation completely, permanently. Still, over 47,000 soldiers escaped that day, boarding anything that floated toward England's distant shore. The Royal Air Force, thinly stretched, fought desperately overhead, often completely unseen by the soldiers below. Many exhausted men cursed the RAF. Unaware pilots were dying just beyond that thick, smoke-filled horizon. On May 30th, sudden bad weather grounded German aircraft, giving exhausted soldiers a brief, precious mercy. 53,000 men reached safety that day, boosted entirely by worsening conditions that grounded enemy planes. May 31st became the single largest day of the entire operation. Over 68,000 men rescued. Destroyers, ferries, and little ships worked in constant motion, a human chain stretching across the English Channel. Soldiers stood shoulder to shoulder on decks built for hundreds, packed instead with several thousand men. By June 1st, clear skies returned, and the Luftwaffe launched its most devastating attacks in the operation. For destroyers and dozens of smaller vessels sank that day, swallowed beneath burning water and black smoke. Still, the rescue continued. Desperation had replaced fear. Retreat had become the only form of resistance left, as French troops finally joined the evacuation in greater numbers. Cooperation between exhausted allies deepened under fire. By June 2nd, most British troops had escaped, though thousands of French soldiers still desperately remained. Churchill insisted the French be rescued equally, refusing to abandon allies in their darkest, most desperate hour. Night became the only safe window. Evacuations now happened almost entirely under thick cover of darkness. On the night of June 3rd, over 26,000 French troops escaped through Dunkirk's battery, burning harbor. 10,000 left aboard small ships. 16,000 more crammed onto larger destroyers and personnel transports. At 3:40 a.m. on June 4th, the destroyer Shikari carried the final 383 men to safety. Behind them, block ships were deliberately sunk, sealing the harbor forever from any further rescue attempts. By 9:30 that morning, German forces finally entered Dunkirk, capturing 90,000 exhausted soldiers left behind. Operation Dynamo officially ended at 2:23 p.m., 9 impossible days after it had quietly begun. What had started as a hope for 30,000 men ended with over 338,000 saved. Nearly 200,000 British troops, and well over 100,000 French soldiers reached safety. Almost 700 civilian boats had crossed the channel, some multiple times, under relentless enemy fire. Around 240 ships were lost that week, alongside hundreds of aircraft on both warring sides. 68,000 British soldiers were killed, wounded, or captured before Dunkirk's evacuation had even begun properly. Nearly all heavy equipment, tanks, and artillery were abandoned, littering French beaches like scattered iron gravestones. On June 4th, Churchill addressed Parliament, calling the retreat a colossal military disaster, never once claiming victory. Yet he also called it a miracle of deliverance, warning bluntly that wars are never won through evacuation. His words became legend. Britain would fight on the beaches, the streets, the hills, never surrendering, because those rescued men, though beaten and humiliated, remained alive to train, rearm, and fight again. Many who escaped Dunkirk would later storm the beaches of Normandy, exactly 4 brutal years afterward. The soldiers once trapped and defeated became the very backbone of an army that eventually liberated Europe. Had those 338,000 men been captured, Britain may have had no army left at all. Without an army, there could be no resistance, no Battle of Britain, no eventual road toward victory. Charles Lightoller, once mocked for surviving the Titanic, died knowing he had helped save an entire nation. Historians still call Dunkirk a defeat wrapped inside a miracle. Disaster quietly transformed into unexpected survival. Ordinary fishermen, firemen, and weekend sailors had done what naval commanders once believed. was simply impossible. 338,000 men were trapped between fire and sea, and an armada of strangers carried them home.